Hey y'all, welcome back. I know we did not have a weekly roundup last week. That is because I was doing stand-up last week. So I had a show last Saturday. That's usually when I record my weekly roundups. And then the week just got really hectic with the holiday and everything. And to be honest, we probably won't have one next week either because I'm moving back home to St. Louis. And this time next week, I will be driving back across the country. There will be nothing in this apartment. So that's just to let you know kind of what's been going on. This week for the weekly roundup, I do have some different topics I want to talk about that are not really like pop culture related. If you follow me on any other socials, you know that I am obsessed with Love Island. I love original Love Island. And then I watch Love Island USA. I'm not as committed to it, like season 2, Justine and Sully's season. I knew that Justine won. I knew like the ins and outs, but I don't think I watched every episode of that season. I didn't watch season 4. I watched all of this last season that just went off, season 5. And Love Island Games just went off and I was obsessed with it. When I say I was pleasantly surprised, I mean, I didn't know what to expect. I knew that they were doing Love Island Games on Peacock, and then they're doing Love Island All-Stars on ITV, you know, over in the UK. So I'll have to fire up the, what is that thing I have? VPN. The VPN for that, which I'm totally fine with. I paid $40 for it. But I will say that even though I recapped every single episode of Love Island Games, I still have so much more to say based on some of the fallout from it, and I didn't want to put it all into a TikTok video because it would be long, it's not as fun. And then also I wanted to touch on Nella Rose. If y'all don't know who that is, she is a UK YouTuber, comedian. I love her. She's on a show right now called Get Me Out of Here. I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, I think it's called. Jamie Lynn Spears is on it. There's a couple different people on it. And she's receiving a lot of backlash right now. So I wanted to discuss kind of that whole thing because people are really just so focused on either one thing is right or the other thing is right. And that's simply not true, especially not in reality TV. I think that people need to practice a lot more nuance. And I really think that, I always say this, you have every right to not care for somebody, not like them, you know, not like what they portray on TV, but what you choose to say about them because you don't like them is always going to be more telling. So I'm gonna touch on that as well. So that's what we have in store for this week. I think we might as well just get into the Nella Rose of it all because I have a little bit less to say about that and it can lead us into Love Island Games. So like I said, Nella Rose is a UK YouTuber, comedian. I just think she's hilarious. And she is on the show, Get Me Out of Here, I'm a Celebrity. I don't know if I'm saying that backwards. I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. I don't know. I haven't been watching. What I have been following, though, is that she started receiving a lot of backlash. And apparently, from what I understand from the clips that I have seen, she kind of had a moment with somebody who is very beloved on the show and over in the UK. And, of course, it was not a shining moment. The show is pretty much made for that. They're taking these people who are used to living like a more lavish lifestyle. They're accustomed to much more, and they're dropping them in kind of a severe surrounding. They're in a jungle, you know what I mean? So from what I understand, the guy made a comment along the lines of, I'm old enough to be your dad. If you don't know, I wasn't even aware before this. I knew that her parents were not alive, but her parents passed away. She's an orphan. Both of them passed away within a short amount of time of one another in probably like 5 or 6 years ago, and when she was starting college. So she didn't like that too much. She had a bit of an outburst on the guy who said that to her, and it has caused such a backlash that I find to be so wild. So a lot of people have been making points, you know, rallying around Nella to protect her, and I think that that's important too, because as we know, the edit, I'm not even going to blame it on the edit. The critiques, the criticism, and the feedback that women of color, black women, and then especially darker skinned black women get when they show any type of emotion that is not is not what people want them to show. I'll say that because I don't want to box it into super bubbly or anything like that, but it's not what people want them to show. The critiques are harsh. Now, so many comments of people, and this is white, black, all around, all across the board, saying, no, she was disrespectful. When are people going to stop using that excuse? Da 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 da. No one is saying that Nella was not rude or disrespectful, or that she didn't have an outburst. But again, the feedback, what people choose to say about Nella because they didn't like how she acted in that moment with the guy that they really do like, is what is more telling. The harsh criticism is always what's going to be more telling. And from what I understand now on the show, her and the guy have moved on, and people are not allowing the space for, okay, her parents passed away. It might be some, unprocessed trauma, things like that. And to the unprocessed trauma part, I see so many people saying, well, my parents died and I got over it, blah, blah. Here's the thing about unprocessed trauma to me. Sometimes you don't realize that trauma is going to, no, let me back this up. Trauma is going to hit you processed or unprocessed, right? And it's about how you deal with it. Of course, when it's unprocessed, then the effects can be a lot greater, and the actions, I should say, are going to be a lot greater. However, my trauma surrounding something versus your trauma surrounding maybe the same exact thing, if we went through the same thing, there's two different things. And I don't get to tell you, okay, well, when I went through this, I acted like this, and so that's how you should act too. And vice versa. Now, I can be a leaning shoulder. I can say, like, when this is what helped me at that time, again, may not be what helped you. However, there's a difference between excusing somebody's actions and then just having empathy and sympathy and understanding and saying, yeah, that was not their shining moment. That was not her most shining moment. But I understand that she is a human. All of these people are human, and we're not all going to have shining moments. So I do want to touch on the disrespectful part, the rude part. One thing that bothers me, obviously y'all know if you follow me, I talk about reality TV a lot. The one thing that I say all the time when I discuss reality TV online on my TikToks is I'm responding to the show as they edited it and put it up on our screens, right? I think that people are so harsh on others on reality TV, and that doesn't mean that I like everybody on reality TV. But what I can do is say, okay, this is an edited version of real life, right? I see certain things that people have done on television, and I'm a human, and I'm not one of those humans online that wants to take the moral high ground and act like I've never done anything wrong. So when somebody does something, when somebody has a reaction, anything like that, in a quote-unquote normal setting, like a housewife setting, essentially in Housewives, they're still in their homes, they're still at restaurants and places that they're familiar with their phones, all of that, there's just camera crew there. I can still be like, yeah, I remember one time I felt backed into a corner, I felt upset with somebody about this, and this is how I reacted. If somebody saw that reaction, that seen the whole setting play out, they may be like, God damn, that girl just replied in a rude way, or XYZ. There's a difference between being rude and saying something rude. People are taking Nella's interaction with the guy who, I don't think he meant to offend her from what I understand, and making it her whole identity. And that's not fair. Just like everybody online moving their thumbs knows that you have had a time or two or three, and and the reality is you're going to continue to have other times in your life when you are faced with conflict and your response may not be the best, or even if you think it is the best, somebody may see it and say, wow, what the fuck is their problem? However, that moment, that argument does not define you. People are trying to make it define her. The criticism that she's receiving is nuts to me. It's nuts You know what I mean? We watch these people on TV for however many, minutes a day, and one reaction, she has one reaction that is based off of, something pretty personal, her parent passing away, how she felt about it. And a lot of people are saying, oh, think of the edit. Yeah, I actually am thinking of the edit there, because who knows what producer may have said what. I'm not really gonna harp too much on that because I don't know, and that is touching on something that I want to get into when it comes to Love Island games later. But again, the reality is, in real life, normal settings, everyday life, not everybody responds to something the same. And I do think that people who build a habit, okay, that we have seen respond to things in a rude way, one after another, yes, they can be considered rude people. However, watching someone have a reaction to something that hits close to home, and maybe a part of their life that they haven't dealt with or processed from, or maybe they even have, it's just a trigger. I'm not going to say that person is rude. And some of the comments that and at the end of the day also, I don't know Nella Rose, and you don't know Nella Rose. So just as people want to say, well, you don't know her, like she could be an awful person. Yeah, I don't know her, and she also could not be an awful person. You know what I mean? You have to leave it up to chance. And to sit here and decide to think, oh, she's an awful person just because you didn't like that interaction is crazy to me. It really is. I kind of feel the same way about the whole Scott Catherine thing from Love Island this past summer. Now, I know that is way past time, but I was fighting for my life online trying to defend Catherine simply because, and we later on learned that it was not what it seemed at all. It was not what it seemed at all. If you watched Love Island UK from the summer, you know that Scott and Catherine, they looked like they had this, such a cute budding romance. But then Catherine went to Casa Amor. She really went all the way in with Elam. Came back, switched couples, came back. Scott was like, no, it's done. Everybody was so mad at Catherine. There's a couple other things where they had, back and forth. Well, it wasn't really a back and forth. Yeah, they had a couple back and forths, right? And then she got dumped off the island because people love Scott so much. Then Catherine comes, and I saw some of the most disgusting things said about that young lady who is 22 years old. Okay, 22 years old on a dating show. And just simply decided that she wanted to give somebody else a chance. At the end of the day, and that was my problem with a lot of it. Yes, I really liked Scott and Catherine, okay? Even if I were to just believe what the edit told me, that did not match the punishment, the words that people were saying about Catherine online. And it was, again, so disgusting because she was a 22-year-old girl. She decided, I want to give this other guy a chance. But because people did not deem him worthy, and don't get me wrong, did Elam come off as just there to advance his career? Yes, he did. That was mainly my thing about it. But even if she decided, hey, I want to give this guy a chance instead of Scott, or get to know them both at the same time, that's her right. And she's 22 years old. And there's a whole lot worse shit going on in the world, even on Love Island, actually, than a 22-year-old girl deciding she wants to date somebody else. I just could not believe the things that people were saying about her. And again, it's fine to make jokes. I make jokes about these shows all the time, but keeping it in perspective. Then she comes off the show and she tells us, okay, actually, things are not as they were perceived with Scott. He told me that it was only me. And then, it turns out him and Leah, he went back to wanting to get to know Leah. Scott, and then people still don't believe her. Scott has to come out of the villa and tell us, actually, that's not how it actually was. I was back and forth, and I didn't actually tell her how I felt about her until, after the fact, and his pride got in the way. And then people are like, oh, okay. I felt like I was in the Twilight Zone. Again, if y'all saw me dating in my 20s, and this is not in a villa, okay? Not in a villa. I would shudder to think about some of the things that would be said about me. You know what I mean? It's just always the response, again. And here's the thing. I saw so many people saying, you know, Catherine should have known better. Catherine, putting the onus on Catherine. And obviously, if you don't watch Love Island, I have no clue why the fuck you would be watching this. If you don't watch Love Island, you don't know what I'm talking about. There was a hint of, you know, Scott's white, Catherine is black. There was a hint of, he likes you, why would you not be interested in him? Just because a motherfucker likes me does not mean that I have to be interested in him. And it's not that she wasn't interested in him. It's just that Scott failed to solidify things, to really show her how he felt about her, albeit because he didn't realize it. But he failed to do that beforehand. So she should keep waiting around for him, because why? But Ellum, whether you liked him or not, again, like I said, he did come off a little fake to me. Ellum did show her. And there were so many hints of, you know, this white man likes you, so you need to stick with him until it's, you know, until he, I don't know what the fuck was going through people's brains. And, you know, it's just, it's sad and it's unfortunate. And it kind of leads into what I want to talk about when it comes to Love Island games. If you don't know by now, because the show's been off a week, so you should know. Jack and Justine won. I'm very happy for them. Justine, my sister. Love you down. But I saw such, and again, I get the comments on this stuff because I do talk about it online. I was really, really confused by the uptick of people, and I'm just going to be so honest, black women saying, I don't know, I don't think Jack likes her very much. I'm going to admit this to y'all. Really wasn't paying that much attention to Jack and Justine, like their romantic connection in the beginning, simply because it wasn't, they had like little clips here and there. I want to say towards the middle is when I started to be like, oh, okay. And whatever my good sisters want to do on these shows, I'm going with them. Okay. I'm just going to be so honest. So I was at the beginning, I was just like, okay, Jack and Justine. Jack had very high energy. I didn't watch his season of Love Island, so sometimes I was like, But one thing that I never doubted was they both seemed to be very into one another. And that is one thing that I started to really pick up on, was because I was like, wow, usually sometimes when you watch these shows, you can kind of tell if somebody's feeling someone more than someone else. I was like, those two seem to like really gel, the bits and parts that I saw of them. I find it interesting when people say like, oh, I don't think he's into her, I don't think he's into her. Because, again, since I comment on or commentate on a lot of the stuff online, I see an uptick of comments. It is almost always a black woman. I'm not saying always. Again, we got to clean out our ears. It's almost always a black woman that people are doubting, is he really into her? And that's not even just with, you know, partners of different races. That's with everybody. It's always, do you think he's really into her? Do you think he's really into her? And I'm like, what? Why? And maybe it's coming off as a, you know, from a protective sense. But again, talking about this shit online, like, what? Even if you think it in your head, that's one thing that I'm like, why is it always, almost always, the black women that is like, oh, I don't think he's really into her? Think about that. You know what I mean? And again, I have no clue why people were saying that. It was very weird to me. Love Island Games was so good, but at the same time, that was one of those shows where I was like, am I watching the same show as a certain group of people? I will say, I watched all of these shows, and this goes for Housewives, Love Island, what's that show about? Love is Blind, almost all of them. One thing that is very obvious, almost always, is there is always either a housewife, a contestant, a couple that, for the most part, the masses really love. They really love them. And then since people love them so much, it creates a subgroup of people who are like, I can't stand him, I can't stand him. And I really don't think that it has to do with the actual people. I think it has to do with how much others love them and how much attention they're getting. I can't explain it. I'm not a psychologist, sociologist, anything like that. But almost always, because I'm going to be honest with y'all, Jack and Justine really didn't do, before the whole Ray thing, they weren't doing anything. They were really not doing anything for people to be like, I can't stand them, blah, blah. They were kind of like, before we started caring about their love story and things like that, like, and before the Ray shit, they were just there. They weren't really like heavy hitters in the, in the drama portion of the season. That would be the Johnnies and all of his rotating partners and things like that. So yeah, I always find it interesting how it creates this subsection of people that are like, I can't stand them simply because other people, and it is simply because other people like them, right? So obviously we're already in the Love Island game, so we'll stay there. Jack and Justine win. When we get down to it, couples, like at the end, couples needed to start being voted off. I think one thing that was very clear, and for me, I failed to see how the alliance portion was going to work out until the very end, or even where the alliances were, because Ray and Imani very clearly were on two different pages in my eyes. And for me, I did go back and watch I didn't watch the first episode. That thing was ridiculously long for no reason to me. I watched the second and third episode back. What I found, why I realized I wasn't picking up on certain alliance I don't want to say formations, dynamics, I will say, is because when Johnny first came in, he stole Imani from Ray. Ray did not stop talking about it for like an episode and a half. I think he told Johnny that was a bitch move to make. Johnny, they had a moment where Johnny was like, yo, don't say that shit again. It wasn't anything huge, but you could tell Johnny was like, all right, yo, like, chill. Don't say that again, because then you're going to piss me off. Ray, being Ray, just putting his own feelings first, because that's what seems to be what he does best, didn't let it go. And then until Ray and Johnny started crying for one another, trying to save each other when they were vulnerable, I was like, what's going on here, right? So I used to be a huge challenge person. Like, alliances would be formed, broken, it was cutthroat. I haven't watched Challenge probably like good 5-6 years. But whenever alliances are formed, I'm always under the impression of like, yeah, this alliance is formed until, not even until the end, until it does not suit anymore. And I think that's always one thing that people fail to talk about. Imani had been in a power couple 3 times, 2 of those with Ray, 1 of them with Johnny. Imani seemed like she got along with everybody to me, don't get me wrong. However, when in Imani's Love Island season 5, I didn't realize that Imani was as young as she was because she was surrounded by other young people. All of them were young. Leo went back to college after coming out of the villa. They're all pretty young from what I'm pretty sure. I think maybe the oldest, 25, 26, right? When Imani got into the villa, to Love Island Games villa, I was like, huh, interesting. And I still wasn't willing to blame it on her being young. I'm more so until other things started to come into play, until I saw other, things that she said on other platforms, not on Love Island Games. I was contributing it to the fact that she did just come out of her Love Island villa, and she really had not had a lot of time to form any relationships with anybody in the Love Island USA space. And Justine and Selly, well, no, Ray was from season 1. But so Ray, Justine, Selly, and Johnny, all season 1, season 2 USA Love Islanders. And the USA Love Islanders, they're pretty like close knit. I will say this, the opportunities when you come off of USA Love Island, you have to like search for them more. You have to dig for them way more than I feel like they have to do in UK. Like in the UK, when they come off of Love Island, they've all been on multiple red carpets, like big red carpets, movie premieres, Pride of Britain Awards, things like that. That does not happen over here. You will not catch a reality TV star for real on any type of like huge award show red carpet. We don't do that over here. I don't know why. I do think that there needs to be more of an avenue for Love Island USA people, but I digress. Back to what I was saying. Yeah, I was more so like, okay, she hasn't spent as much time in the Love Island USA space. All these other people know each other and they've been in the Love Island space a bit longer than her, a good deal longer, 2-3 years, right? Then when everything went down, and I mean, when I say went down, I even mean down between her and Ray. A lot of people blamed Ray for, not building the gap between Justine and Imani. However, I really don't think that there was any actual beef between Imani, Selly, and Justine. I really don't. Obviously, it's a game. People get mad, and we saw them get mad. However, so many people who disagree with what Justine injected, which was eliminate Ray and Imani, I feel like are missing the point where Imani did the entire season to people she was cool with whenever she got a chance. She was cool, and we're gonna have to find some nuance here. I couldn't stand Lisa on the show, right? I will stand 10 toes down on I didn't agree with her calling Imani two-faced. And again, trying to compare it to, you said I played the game aggressively. There's a huge difference between calling somebody two-faced and saying somebody is playing a game aggressively. Those two do not match to me. No, I can't. I can't stand Lisa. Imani was her friend, okay? And she was not vulnerable. She was not vulnerable. Imani and Ray, or what is it, Imani and Johnny? I can't remember. Imani made her vulnerable, and then she got kicked out, right? Same thing with Toby and Georgia, which we'll get to Toby. Toby and Georgia were not vulnerable. Imani and Ray made them vulnerable. Made them vulnerable. And then Ray and Toby obviously spent some time cackling in the hotel. And when they came back into the villa, had all this smoke for Selly and Justine. I get Ray having smoke, get like old wound open, blah, blah. However, a couple people there that really had the most smoke for Imani would have had the most smoke for Imani and Ray didn't get to have that smoke because they're sitting over there in the elimination bleachers with them, right? So it just really, it seemed like it was odd and it seemed like a lot of misplaced anger. Justine and Jack did what they did. Ray was like, I was there for you, you cried on my shoulder about Jack. Okay, yeah, there's a big difference between me crying on your shoulder and you being my direct competition and standing in my way of 100K. You can cry on my shoulder. You cannot stand in my way of 100K. Period. And just because I let you cry on my shoulder doesn't mean that I think that you're going to save me each and every time. It was just his reactions where he has every right to feel, the wound, feel hurt, but Ray's carrying on online and even in the background of the finale was very telling. And usually I am a person that thinks that people are kind of responsible for their fans and how they react. A lot of Selly fans, Justine fans have been rattling off in a lot of people's comment sections. Again, not my ministry. I don't do that. When it comes to Ray, people were asking Selly and Justine, oh, tell your fans to back off, tell your fans to back off. Ray is sharing fan edits of Justine backstabbing him, calling Justine a backstabber. Ray is liking mean comments about Justine and Selly. Ray's not doing himself any favors is what I'm trying to get at. It's ridiculous. Now, when it comes to the whole Toby of it all, and this is going to tie into the whole blame it on the edit. All of us were watching all that smoke the ex-Islanders had for these people, and we were scratching our heads, right? Obviously, I know that Love Island is a 24-hour surveillance show that we get edited down into 1 hour. Absolutely believe that. So many people who don't like Justine, Selly, Jack, all of them were like, and even the ex-Islanders were like, think about what we saw. When it comes to the blaming it on the edit, again, I find it so funny when people want to throw that out there and when they don't. In the case of the whole Love Island game situation. I am so aware, again, that this is edited down. But if you want me to believe, this is a show about drama and ratings. If you want me to believe that Justine and Jack and hell, Sully and I all were some type of snakes moving in the grass, and they have 100, like, I keep saying 100, thinking 100%. Sorry, my camera died. They have 24-hour surveillance, and they're all running through the villa, intimidating people, being snakes in the grass, and they're not going to show us whatsoever. I'm sorry, I'm not buying that. To equate it to kind of Scott and Catherine during the summer Love Island, we all, by the time Catherine was dumped from the villa, they were hugging each other bye. I mean, we saw one last conversation from them, and we were like, wait a minute, when did they become cool? We later found out that they had been squashed it. They just didn't show us. Why? Because the scenes of them yelling at each other and arguing are more salacious. They're more content that we want to see than them making up to the producers, right? Than, you know, them being cool with one another. So those producers, I'm sure there's stuff that we didn't see. Obviously, it's 24-hour surveillance. However, if Jack, Justine, Sully, and I all were really running around the villa, intimidating other players, lying to everybody's faces, and they had this footage of it, and they just didn't show it to us, that doesn't make sense. They would do that. Case in point, and because it's storytelling. Case in point, they showed us Imani asking for Courtney's clothes. Why? Because Imani did what she did, and she backstabbed her, and then the whole pie situation happened. So it's story building. They're not just going to leave all of this stuff out for the purpose of to be in the favor of Jack and Justine. They're just not, right? We have to be smarter than that, okay? Just as, again, they're not going to show us Scott and Catherine making up because it probably wasn't as like, ooh, as everybody wanted. Plus, we know that Love Island producers during the live seasons edit to what they think people want to see and what they don't. I'll leave that there. Now, to move on to Zeta. Zeta, it was clear, was having kind of a reaction to the villa not being well received in the villa. Now, again, I will say tone blue in the face. You got to talk to production about that. I do not think they should drop those 6 bombshells in at the end again. I don't blame any of those older Islanders, the ones who had been there since the beginning, who are in solid couples, for not recoupling. The only people who recoupled were the people who had to. So Callum, because Liberty went home. Johnny didn't have to, but Johnny. And Courtney, right? Those were, and then Zeta and Mitch coupled up with one another. If you're in a solid couple, I'm going to stick to that. Nobody had control except for the producers when Zeta came in. It seemed like she had some type of energy for a lot of people in the villa. You know, she had mentioned like, oh, they hate us. And again, like, girl, I don't think anybody hates you. I just don't think anybody's thinking about you. And as far as her energy towards Jack and Justine, mainly Justine, I found it weird because apparently her and Justine were friends. Now, Justine said in, I think one of the recaps, I saw a clip of it, she said, yes, I'm friends with Zeta, but the point in which she came in at the game, I just knew that I could not talk strategy with her. I don't blame her for that, okay? We are friends outside of this, but when 100K is involved, I'm here for a reason, you're here for a reason, and we're not coupled up together. So, and you're in here late. You're in here late. I felt like some of the things that Zeta said to Justine about Jack were, one could say, were out of their similar situations, because as we know, Justine was with Caleb. Caleb had a girlfriend the entire time. And then, what was it? Zeta, I think his name is Tommy, something like that. From what I understand, it was just all deceitful. His sister had told him to like go for a certain type of girl, meaning i.e. like a dark-skinned black girl, to win the the audience over, I think. And then he said a couple other things that were like not okay from what I understand. I mean, I did not watch that season, but from all the things that I read online about what Zeta said Timmy did, and even if it's not all the way like that, even if it's just a fraction of what she said he did, he is still a fucking asshole, for lack of a better term. Like, what's wrong with you? But I get that it could be, you know, out of fear for that, but her energy was just off the entire time. And after the show was complete, she wrote a blog post that was behind a paywall where she kind of, I don't know, I'm gonna say kind of, she told her side of events, right? And from what I understand from just a few people who may know a few more things, she tried to make it seem like it was an act and Jack really wasn't into Justine. And here's my thing with that. If Justine really is your friend, if that is something that you're concerned about, how you expressed it was not, that's not how you express that, right? And I know that she was interested in possibly coupling up with Jack at, when she came into the villa. But again, I'm not shocked that the people that didn't need to recouple, so the Callums, the Courtneys, I'm not surprised that they stuck with their partners. It was so late in the game. However, Sally and Justine had been doing their recaps. Jack was in one of them. He accidentally called Zeta Zendaya. I want to say this. And I just did it. Zeta has every right to feel some type of way that Jack called her Zendaya, right? Jack is a white presenting man. His dad is black, but he looks like a white man. And he got her name wrong. I completely understand that. That upset her. She has every right to, you know, feel a type of way about that. I would call Justine and be like, hey, can't believe you didn't edit that out. I do feel some type of way about it. I wouldn't write a blog post about it behind a paywall, but neither here nor there. And then she kind of went on to describe a couple of things from the people that read the blog post and, you know, kind of put it up on Twitter and things like that. That it was not great, right? She changed their names. She insinuated again that Jack really was not into Justine, things of that nature that kind of, And then when people started, you know, coming at her about it, asking more questions, kind of having something to say like, hey, this isn't cool. What I saw on Twitter was she hit the, oh, I support black women button, okay? And I want to say this about that. The tweet that I saw specifically was, y'all could never turn me against my fellow black queens. Love Justine, love Imani, there was somebody else, a couple other names in there, I can't remember, I don't care. And the way people automatically fell for it a little bit. And again, that may be because of lack of context or who knows. However, I want to say this about black women interacting with one another. And it kind of ties back into, you know, the whole Nella Rose thing, and that's why we'll end on this, is black woman to black woman, we absolutely can have differences. We absolutely can. We don't have to get along. We don't have to be friends. We don't have to agree. But for me, sisterhood, well, it's not ally if we're both black, but sisterhood, allyship, things like that, that just means that if somebody wants to take it too far, if somebody wants to then talk about you in X, Y, Z way, a microaggressive way, you know, kind of racist way, things like that, I'm going to put a stop to that. I was disappointed, I will say, to see that hot button pushed of like, oh, y'all could never turn me against my black queens, when that's not I didn't know Zeta was friends. Don't bring us into it, okay? Did people try and turn you against your fellow black queens, or did you write something that was questionable? There's an ownership of actions that I feel like is not being taken there. And again, it doesn't always come down to, okay, I'm black, you're black, we're both black women, so I'm going to agree with everything you have to say, I'm going to back you. But there's just a certain way that I won't talk about you, you know what I mean? There's certain comments that I will not allow, because I understand what it's like to be on the receiving end of those. And it was just, again, so like laughable. The people who fell for it was like, oh yeah, I know, that's right, don't let them turn y'all against each other. It's not interpretation. That's what it is. And again, I don't know how I'm supposed to interpret a blog post about your friend's man low-key wanting you. because that's what was written. Okay, at least in the parts that I saw. And it was just, you know, there's a way to hold each other accountable. There's a way to say, like, yeah, I didn't fuck with that shit you did, without, you know, it becoming, you excuse every black woman's, you know, actions, whether they're good or bad. And then there's a way to, you know, not be too harsh on them as well. And I just think that even in the reality TV space in general, but especially, you know, the Love Island reality TV space, that's a thing that is just baffling to me. I'm gonna go ahead and wrap it up there. Like I said, probably won't have a weekly roundup next week because I will be driving across the country, just to keep it realistic. But after that, we will be back on a regular weekly posting schedule. Y'all know where to find me over on other socials. TikTok is Who Asked Zell. Instagram, all of that stuff will be on the after credits. And if you have anything that you would like to weigh in on from this video, don't forget to put it down in the comments. I can't wait to talk to y'all, and like and subscribe.